Hello everybody, Vagband here, and welcome to Review Wednesday, a weekly series where I list the pros and cons of games so you can decide whether to buy it or not. Today we're reviewing Thief. As I did last week with Watch Dogs, I won't give an arbitrary number out of 10 at the end of it. I'll just list the pros and cons of the game so you can decide whether or not to buy it. Firstly, let's talk about the pros of this game. This game has the fun factor, and how I define this is that it's a game that I find myself looking forward to playing when I'm not playing it. And that's probably the best compliment you can give to any game. Doesn't matter what genre it's in. The art style of the game is aesthetically very pleasing. Like the city you play in is actually called The City, and the building style is very different throughout the game. Like in the poor section, it's sort of medieval style with the kind of wooden walls, thatched roof, all that stuff. Where in the more richer places, Victorian, stone walls, slate. It's very, those little touches are very nice. It uses space very well, and the game seems larger than it actually is. Because it's very compact. Like there's a lot of houses you can actually go in and out of, and that makes it, as I said, gives more depth to it, and it uses space very well, which is a good pro in my book. Actually very similar to Dishonored, which I've heard a lot of people compare the game to in general too, which I agree with. It is very like Dishonored. Not a bad thing either. The controls of this game are very fluid and very smooth, and very rarely did I discover that when I was trying to be stealthy that I was discovered due to lack of good controls. And that's probably the most frustrating thing you can do in a stealth game, where you're discovered because your guy leans out where you didn't want him to. That doesn't happen in Thief. Controls are very good. Each main mission is highly replayable because, like, at the end of it, it shows you how many loot items you collected, and if you've achieved any of the side objectives in the mission, such as kill X amount of guards or such. There are a great many of side quests, and they are very varied in the type, which they're not just like a cut and paste type thing, cut and paste 20 times over. They're different, and that leads to them actually being fun to play rather than something you just do, so you say you clear the game fully. The game itself is very well paced, and the main missions are very varied even. Sorry. The best example I can give this is the Moira Asylum level, which I posted on my last video, which is basically like a horror game in the middle of a stealth game, which I found was very interesting to change up the pacing. And now let's talk about the cons of the game. Graphically, it's the worst looking AAA title I've seen on the PS4 so far. Like, especially with faces, they look like they definitely look last gen, even though I'm playing on next gen. And while that, in a different kind of game, that would be a drawback, but in this game, like, you can see the level of lighting you see at the moment. It's completely dark apart from torchlight. It's like that throughout the entire game. I suppose it's hard to get good graphics when the game is completely set in darkness, so kind of forgiven for that. When there's another con of this game is when there's a lot of action happening on screen, a lot of things moving at once. It tends to be a very noticeable frame rate drop, and this is probably this and the poor graphics are probably due to the fact that it runs on the Unreal Engine, which, if you don't know, is a very old engine. It's been used for years, and I believe the Unreal Engine 2 is coming out sometime soon. But this is probably the last kind of generation of games beyond the Unreal Engine. Yeah, and a final complaint I might have about the game is that the story itself could be better. I didn't find it to be all that compelling. Like, I like the main character Garrett. I think he's cool, to be honest. Like, he's kind of a cool thief guy, like, he interjects at all moments throughout the game, kind of dry wit type thing. I like to see that in the character. But as I said, the story itself not entirely compelling. I just liked playing it because I like playing different, just the levels really. Yeah, another area where this kind of looks more like a last gen game is, as you can see here, where I'm squeezing through this gap. I believe you already saw one example of this. This is basically like their way of having an animated loading screen. Like, that was a loading screen that just went through there. That was their way of kind of trying to hide how, like, their game wasn't capable of loading up two areas at once. But overall, I recommend this game. Well, that's enough from me for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you had, leave a comment, like, subscribe if you aren't already subbed, and hopefully I'll have another review out next week. Vagabond out.